Let's go to our panel now. In Jakarta is Dradjad Wibowo. He's a member of the opposition National Mandate Party and is on the advisory board of the National Committee to elect Prabowo and Sandi. And also from Jakarta is Shoeb Kagda, who's the founder of the Indonesian Economic Forum. Before that, he was a correspondent who covered Indonesia for more than 20 years. And in Melbourne is Greg Barton, a professor of global Islamic politics at Deakin University. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. Shoeb, trouble on the streets. Are those people protesters or rioters, or does it depend on who you ask?
Well, I think there's a mixture of both. There's a majority of them were protesters, but I think in the midst of them there were some troublemakers and rioters, as you say. Hopefully, the police have arrested most of them. They've arrested more than 250 of these troublemakers and inciters of violence and social unrest. But I think there were also genuine protesters on the streets of Jakarta over the last 2 days.
Greg Barton, Jokowi got 55% of the vote. This spasm of violence on the streets after the announcement of that, is there any reason to doubt the election result? Was it a free and fair election?
There's no reason to doubt the overall result. Obviously, there, with 800,000 polling booths and 160 million people or thereabouts lodging their votes, there will be some irregularities, but there's nothing to suggest systematic fraud or problems of a scale that would call the results into question. The gap is 17 million votes, 11%. So that seems pretty clear.
Dradjad Wibowo, so why then is Prabowo alleging, quote, massive cheating and irregularities? Where's the proof?
Yes, this is cannot be said as a fair and a free election, because there has been some irregularities and also the involvement of state apparatus into to some degree coercing rural votes to vote to the incumbent. There are those are some instances that we documented. And also, there is a huge gap between the number of votes for presidential election and the number of votes for the legislative elections. The gap is 14 million, around 14 million votes. As you know, voters are given both presidential election paper ballot and also legislative election paper ballots at the same time, and it's just a little bit beyond normal to have 14 million.
But maybe they just don't like the presidential candidate, Dradjad. I mean, if we look at it and if we analyze that nobody's coming out, none of the election monitors are coming out and saying there's widespread proof of rigging. It looks as if, Dradjad, Prabowo is risking people's lives by calling them to go out onto the streets, by telling them that there was rigging. Prabowo is risking people's lives because of sour grapes after losing an election.
Well, as somebody that has been in the Indonesian elections since 2004, I know that vote riggings, either in local elections, mayoral election, governor election, legislative elections, it's very common. It's just like corruption. In the old days, during Suharto's era, when somebody say there is a widespread corruption, people say the authority will say that where is the proof? Where is the legal proof? Of course, we cannot get the legal proof because it's very hard. And there is a journalist got killed because he exposed the corruption of one mayor in Jogja or Central Java, sometimes a long time ago, some decades ago. But then after we have KPK. We got legal proof not only about the size of corruption, but also about the modus, about the the connection, everything. Because they have the power to intercept. Yeah.
Shoeb, are you convinced at all by Dradjad's argument that this might have been rigged?
To be very honest, it is difficult to buy wholesale into the argument. as you mentioned, there were irregularities. There may have been a little bit of miscounting, some small-time cheating, but widespread and systematic fraud, I think, would be difficult to prove. And I think the Prabowo camp should present its evidence clearly if it has that evidence.
Greg Barton, now Prabowo is pleading to all elements of the people to refrain from physical acts of harm and so on, and he's asking people to calm things down. Is that going to be enough to calm the situation?
Let's hope it's the case. It's very much to be welcome that he's doing this. He should have done it 2 days ago. He should never have engaged in the reckless rhetoric of calling out masses on the streets. He bears some responsibility for what's happening, but it is very good he's now on the front foot calling for calm. And that is important not just because of the power of his words, but because it may signal that he's recognizing that he's not going to make any advance by engaging mass protests. So that's an encouraging sign of that.
Right. So, Dradjad, is that the clear plan right now, Dradjad, that you're going to fight this election in the constitutional court, but you don't want people to go out onto the streets anymore?
Yeah, we will fight this one in the constitutional court. But please remember that the 212 movement has been going out to the streets several times for years now, and hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people turn out, and then and everything just peaceful and even very clean. If you look at the National Monument, it was very clean after the protest. So we have a record in Indonesia to have a very peaceful and very clean physically protest.
Dradjad, let me ask you, and I apologize for interrupting. I want to ask you about what you think of what the National Police Chief had to say, Tito Karnavian, who was showing reporters a sniper rifle with a silencer, 2 revolvers, seized from among the protests from people arrested in the days before the rioting broke out. And he said there is an effort to provoke, to create martyrs, blame the authorities, and invoke public anger. Is that what your camp is trying to do?
I hope there will be a independent investigation into what happens in the last 2 nights, because lives have been lost unnecessarily, and we have evidence of the use of live ammunitions, and for sure the 212 protesters, they don't have such kind of ammunition. So and I've been gathering information from the field of what happens actually, because actually the protest is that they do prayer, and then they do, of course, singing, blah blah blah, and then after the Tarawih prayer they disperse, they go out, they leave. And then there is a new crowd coming in, and we don't even know where they're from, and that's this new crowds should be investigated.
Okay.
Who they are.
So Shoeb, help. Okay, so
yesterday, last night.
Certainly. So let me ask Shoeb.
Yeah, last night.
Okay. Okay, finish your point, Dradjad. Sorry about that.
Last night, Pak Amin Rais, Fadli Zon, all those has called for the protesters to disperse after the Maghrib prayers, which is after 6 o'clock, around 6 o'clock. Yeah. Then the protesters dispersed, and then suddenly there is new crowds coming in, and then they the one who throw firecrackers or whatever, and we just don't know where they are. And I asked some people who are there, do you know who's this guy? No, they don't. So that's to be investigated, yeah, for sure.
Shoeb, who is this new crowd, and do you accept that this new crowd might have nothing to do with the supporters of Prabowo?
Well, we really don't know who this new crowd is, where they come from. Let me say, the opportunity for them to create social unrest was created because of the protest. I understand the right to protest, but I think in Indonesia over the last few elections, we've seen too many of these incidences. It's time for the leaders to understand that nobody wins when these things happen.
Greg Barton, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, blocked, sometimes for a short period of time, sometimes for longer. Because of the nature of things and the spread of so-called fake news, was it justified?
We don't really know at this point. We can certainly see that there's a crisis that the police and the government are trying to get on top of. They worry about fake news fomenting further unrest. They also worry about people communicating and planning through encrypted messaging like WhatsApp. If they carry on this ban for too long, then you'd have to, wonder whether that can be justified. But in the very short term, you can see why they might think this was a reasonable thing to do. The proof will be in the pudding. If they get on top of the violence and they show that they can bring things under control and they restore these services, I think people will accept this brief interruption.
Shoeb, give me an idea of some of the stuff that's being spread on social media networks and on chatting apps such as WhatsApp that might cause trouble on the streets.
Well, I think the police were very quick to kind of clamp down on the spread of false news or fake news on social media. One of the things I saw yesterday, for example, was a message or a video going out about Chinese policemen imported from China who were shooting at the crowds. This is a direct reflection of trying to reference President Joko Widodo's close ties to China.
Right.
Such small videos. A video was circulating on social media concerning that issue. I think this is very dangerous.
Right. So, Dradjad, we have had evidence of some of the protesters chanting anti-Chinese slogans, such as "Kick Chinese out" or "Usir Chinao," and "Awas Asing," and my apologies for my terrible Indonesian, "Beware of foreigners," apparently that's what it means. Referencing Jokowi, do you endorse those chants or do you condemn those chants?
No, I condemn those chants, and me as a professional, I'm a professional economist, and I also do some. I used to be a commissioner at one of the largest Indonesia bank in Indonesia, one of the largest state bank. We do business with everybody, regardless of their color, their race, and everything. So I those chants, yeah.
Greg, are we seeing this being the kind of fruits of a very divisive campaign?
We are seeing in the short term some unwanted fruits. There has to be some responsibility accepted amongst all who would incite with provocative language and call for mass protest. But the blame does fall particularly on Prabowo at the moment. Hopefully this will be a short phase. Hopefully that this venting of emotion, I accept that the majority of the 212 protesters are sincere and don't intend to be violent, but it is this opportunistic use of chaos. We've had reports that police have arrested cells linked to Islamic State. There are others who wish to foment chaos. We need to accept the seriousness of the situation that allows things to spiral out of control, even if that's not the intent of Prabowo or his supporters. So I don't think this is going to be a long-running problem. I think it'll be over, I hope, relatively quickly, because I think there's a lot of will on that part. Prabowo's call for this is an important sign that he wishes that.
Right.
But this is something that will have to be considered in terms of accounting for the way politics is being done.
Shoeb, Greg is hopeful that this is a sort of momentary venting. Do you agree with that?
Given from past experience, I think it will be momentary. I don't think this is going to continue for much longer. We do hope, that the leaders understand the damage that it does to Indonesia's reputation, and in terms of giving people false hope, because I think the election results should be honored.
Dradjad Wibowo, so you're going to the Constitutional Court with your argument that the election was not free and fair. If the Constitutional Court comes back to you and says the election stands, would you accept that?
Well, let's see how how it goes in the Constitutional Court. Will there be a free and fair trial? And let's see how it goes. And for me myself, I would do it. But of course, it is a collective decision. So. Let's see. I don't want to preempt anything yet.
But you do believe that the Constitutional Court is free and fair and they are impartial, right?
Well, to some degree, yeah. But if you see some of the judges has been caught for corruption, and you see the amount of money, that's if the chairperson of the Constitutional Court was caught by KPK, our corruption eradication bodies, and also another judge. So,
but if they're corrupt, they might rig it in your favor, right? I mean, if they're fundamentally corrupt, they might even rig it in your favor. You're open to that idea, right?
Well, we don't have enough money to do it.
Okay, this is interesting. It sounds as if you're hanging a big question mark over their legitimacy and maybe hedging your bets politically. Gentlemen, it's been good to talk to all of you. Dradjad Wibowo, Shoeb Kagda, and Greg Barton. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Imran.